I'm planning to make this video title something about how the Steam Deck is a handheld from the 2000s or something like that, and you're probably wondering what on earth I'm talking about. To give you a bit of context, if you look back at the early gaming handhelds like the Game Boy, for the most part they were very much just gaming handhelds. You would just get them to play games on and nothing else. In the 2000s though, that started to change with handhelds like the PSP. The PSP could do all kinds of stuff like playing back videos and browsing the internet. It was like having a smartphone before smartphones were really even a thing. And 2010 handhelds kind of carried that on. For example, my 3DS can do stuff like browse the internet, it has a music player, it even has some very basic animation software. However, by this point, smartphones were starting to become more of a thing. So these handhelds had a lot more competition because smartphones, as you well know, can do an awful lot more than those handhelds can. So with their next generation of handhelds, did they up their game? Did they take on the smartphones with brand new features? No. Nintendo didn't even bother including a browser in their latest handheld. And PlayStation didn't even bother including a handheld. The Steam Deck, though, is much more of a continuation of that mindset that the 2000s handhelds had, because it is packed full of features far beyond just playing games. When you first turn the Steam Deck on, after you finish sitting through all the updates and stuff that it has to download, it at first appears to just be a regular handheld console. You're presented with the Steam interface, you can select your games to download, and after they've downloaded, you can just play them. Oh, that's kind of sad seeing Dirt 3 in grid without any updated cover art. Even freaking Siberia's got updated art, but these haven't. Very simple, very straightforward, and it does feel really good playing games. At first, the size seemed a bit weird to me. It's an awful lot of controller to have in your hands, but after getting used to it, I found that I could use my regular grips quite comfortably, and the controls feel really high quality too. Very nice buttons and sticks, and the D-pad is really good. It rolls from one direction to another nice and easily, very comfortable to use. The weight is also less of an issue than I was expecting. As you can see, I'm just a pair of disembodied hands, so I was expecting it to be a bit difficult for me with the weight. But actually it's lighter than my iPad is, and it is light enough that you can lie on your back in bed and hold it over your face for a little while, and it is still reasonably comfortable. Where it starts to get a bit unusual though is when you see the trackpads that it has. These let you get controls that feel a bit more like a desktop mouse. Obviously this is great for things like first-person games and strategy games which you would normally play with a keyboard and mouse. But it also is great with a desktop operating system. And as I'm sure you know, the Steam Deck does indeed come with a full desktop OS on it. Now, functionality wise, this is a clear one-up over smartphones, because as much as your smartphone can do, it is no desktop computer. If we look back at the handhelds from the 2000s and the 2010s though, it wasn't just about the extra functionality that they offered you. It was also the way that they gave you that functionality. If you look at my 3DS music player, you can see that it doesn't just play music. It gives you a bunch of goofy little extra features that you can play around with and have fun with. And even the home screen lets you customize it with themes and icons that make it feel so much more fun and so much more personal. It's kind of like having a digital bedroom or something. And I don't mean the kind of boring bedroom that grown-ups have, I mean a fun bedroom full of action figures and comics and posters of your favorite stuff. So how does the Steam Deck stack up against that kind of competition? The operating system that it uses on here, rather than being something like Windows, is a custom version of Linux. And while I associate Windows with stuff like antivirus and programs that are constantly trying to push adverts in your face, and just an overall quite cold and corporate feel, this operating system is a lot more welcoming and a lot more fun in my opinion. I think you'll be able to see part of why I say that when we take a look at the App Store that this OS comes with. And I use the term store very loosely because you don't actually buy anything here. As far as I'm aware, everything here is free to download, and an awful lot of it is completely open source. You can see here in the most popular section it's got stuff like VLC and Firefox and GIMP, and also a strategy game for some reason. Because it isn't trying to sell you anything, none of these apps are getting really shoved in your face. It's just presenting you with these options that you can choose if you want them. And it's easy to see how all of these things are either useful or fun. You'll see that even more if we go and have a look in the All Applications section. In here, the first application you can see is this ambient sounds app, so you can have some nice relaxing sounds in the background on your desktop. There's Space Cadet Pinball like the old versions of Windows used to have. And Nook Desktop, which lets you have Animal Crossing music playing in the background. And if you go looking further, there's a bunch of, obviously very useful stuff, and very fun stuff as well. There's so little here that feels corporate. It feels very community driven and pleasant. There's Cave Story there, and there's a bunch of other really fun little things like that. It's even got the Powder Toy on here, and Sonic Roboblast, and there's just so many fun little things. On something like the Apple App Store, I mean, you would certainly be finding plenty of games there, but it's all stuff that constantly wants to sell you things. There's so little in the way of fan projects and just passion-driven, fun, open source stuff. While, as I keep saying, this is just so crammed full of software that is either practical or just really entertaining and very passion-driven. After you've got your system set up with some nice relaxing sounds in the background, some Animal Crossing music, maybe some desktop games and a nice wallpaper, it just feels like such a nice place to be. It's so relaxing and pleasant. I find that's especially augmented by the form factor of the Steam Deck. There's something I've always liked about a well-made handheld, and being able to have all this capability sitting right there in your hands. And Steam Deck takes that even further by letting you hold a full desktop OS in your hands like this. There's just something so nice about that. And while it is small, I wouldn't say it's cramped. The operating system makes good use of the space that you've got on the screen, and even while you're doing file management stuff, I tend to find that I've got enough room to work with, and I don't really struggle too much with the amount of screen space, usually anyway. And then there's also using the trackpad on here, which at first it felt a bit weird and I struggled being accurate with it, but having used it a fair bit, I find that I can be quite precise and reasonably fast with it, and it's pretty comfortable to use now. Is it perfect though? No, definitely not. There is definitely quite a bit of jankiness to this operating system. I tend to find that after using it for a few hours, stuff just kind of begins to break down. And, I mean, all you have to do to fix it again is reboot the Steam Deck. But all the same, it is definitely a bit janky, and if I'm in the desktop mode and going back to the gaming mode, I find it so common for the internet to stop working that I actually normally just completely restart the console and just let it boot up into gaming mode on its own, because I would probably have to reboot it to get it working properly again anyway. I actually haven't seen anyone else complain about this, which is slightly concerning. I don't think I've got a faulty Steam Deck, but whatever the case, the jankiness definitely doesn't make it unusable. And there are some other things, like I wanted to make the icon sizes a bit bigger so that you can use the touchscreen more easily. But I found that not only was it quite difficult to get any of the icons to actually change size, but also trying to change the sizes of stuff kind of breaks a few things on here. I would say though that overall I prefer this Linux jank to the Windows jank that I'm more used to. The App Store that it has on here is definitely a noteworthy part of that. I don't think Valve actually curates the App Store itself. I think it comes with one of the versions of Linux. I don't know a huge amount about Linux, but that's the impression I get. But all the same, Valve decided to include it on here, and it means that you don't have to go into your browser to find stuff to install, and you don't have to go into a very corporate app store that's constantly advertising you stuff. Instead, you've got something that's so much more community driven and so much nicer. Something else I also really appreciate with the Steam Deck is the fact that it isn't just the desktop mode. The default mode of the Steam Deck is the gaming mode, and that is much simpler and much less janky. Even as someone who appreciates being able to tweak stuff, I am really grateful that I can just turn all of these extra things off and just go back to a simple interface where you just boot it up, you press on a game, you wait for it to update, and then you just enjoy playing the game. There's nothing complex to it, and that's going to be even more beneficial to people who don't like tweaking stuff. If you prefer to keep things simple, then you really don't have to use the desktop mode at all, I don't think. There are a few games out there which, if you want to get the most out of them, you might want to go and arrange a few files or whatever, but for the most part, you do not have to touch the desktop side of this console. As I'm sure you can tell, I do really like the Steam Deck. Would I actually recommend it to you though? I think really you are a better judge of whether or not this is something for you. There are a lot of different options out there at the moment. The Steam Deck is one of many different devices that you could get. If it does seem to fit your needs though, I would definitely recommend it. And if I ever do get another desktop handheld like this in the future, I think it would have to be either an upgraded Steam Deck or something very similar, because I don't want to have to deal with stuff like Windows, but at the same time I do want to have some degree of freedom to be able to tweak stuff and to have extra functionality in there. The Steam Deck offers such a great middle ground between being a console and being a desktop computer. And in my opinion, that really captures the spirit of those 2000s handhelds, which could do so much more than just playing games. Thank you for watching all the way through this video, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to me ramble on about my Steam Deck. If you have, then don't forget to dislike and unsubscribe, and don't you dare leave a comment down below.